Miami is a team that's built to win in September through November.
There's something that we need to do offensively and defensively as the Dolphins.
His 3 worst career games when the temperature is below 50.
The Dolphins have agreed to terms with wideout Odell Beckham Jr.
Is that the team that's going to be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl?
The Dolphins have signed Odell Beckham Jr. to be the third option in what was already one of the best offenses in the entire NFL. OBJ has been a bit of a journeyman since departing from Cleveland, and while I believe his best years are behind him, given that he's not going to even be the second target on this dangerous and speedy offense, you get the feeling that the Dolphins may finally be able to put it all together. But is this actually legit? Or will the Dolphins fall on their face again?
Tua swinging it out. Look out!
What it do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Triple DS, and I need a haircut.
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
And I think we should start with some context. This team had been searching for a very long time for their next franchise quarterback. In 2019, people were regarding the Dolphins as the worst team in football. And my God, did they prove it.
This might be the worst football team in the NFL I've ever seen.
And Tank for Tua had begun to run wild. This team miraculously carved out 5 wins in the final 9 games to earn the number 5 overall pick in the upcoming draft. They still got their wish and landed Alabama quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. The next 2 years would prove to be huge steps in the right direction. The Dolphins would go 10-6, then 9-8 in 2020 and 2021 respectively, and Tua's numbers were fine, but unfortunately, he was drafted in the 2020 class, where his contemporaries are Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts. Because of the other quarterbacks in this class's success to this point, the pressure was on for Tua to deliver. Questions would continue in the 2022 offseason as Brian Flores would be controversially fired. And that is a story for another day. Fortunately for Tua, the Dolphins would strike gold on their next head coach in Mike McDaniels. And the Dolphins would also make a big splash, no pun intended, boy, if you don't, by acquiring Tyreek Hill. These additions, to go along with their 2021 first round pick Jaylen Waddle, would take Tua's game to new heights, and he would go on to have his best year as a pro, making the playoffs for the first time in his career. It would be a narrow loss to the Bills, but there was one key element here: hope. Boy, if you don't. 2023 was another breakout campaign for Miami in a variety of different ways. Raheem Mostert broke out in the running game, and even when he was out, rookie Devon Achane would step in and play phenomenal football. The Dolphins had a run game finally, and not only that, but with the addition of Jalen Ramsey to bolster the secondary, this team was on paper one of the scariest in the entire NFL. I mean, who was gonna stop this team?
Not me.
Led by Tua, Cheetah, and top 3 wide receiver himself, Chase Claypool. The Dolphins bullied their way to an 11-4 run and controlled their own destiny in the playoffs to this point. However, injuries would begin to circle this team as Tyreek Hill, who was on pace to break the receiving yards record, would sustain an injury. The Bills would catch fire and would take back first place in the division by week 18, defeating the Dolphins in the final game of the regular season. Now the Dolphins would have to go on the road and prove themselves that they could handle a cold environment, and they would go on to lose to Kansas City 26-7. So at this point, what went wrong? The Dolphins this past year had the number 1 ranked offense in the NFL. They had superstars on both sides of the ball, and the defense was ranked in the top 10. I previously mentioned that Hill sustained an injury that would hinder him down the road. Not only that, but the Dolphins had 2 big question marks on their team despite their success on paper. One was that Miami could not beat a team over 500. The other was that Miami could not win in cold weather games. 2 factors that the playoffs are all about. There's no shame in losing to Kansas City, but they didn't even put up a fight. With that given, it'd be hard to believe in them even now. Circling back to the OBJ signing, could this be the missing piece to finally bring it all together? I'm traditionally on the side of I want to see it to believe it when it comes to the Dolphins, and honestly, when it comes to OBJ at this point in his career. Maybe OBJ could be the difference maker. At the end of the day, the media is hyping this up like they are the next monster trio in the NFL. But let's look a little bit deeper to this Miami roster. Yes, Miami signed Odell Beckham Jr., but we haven't mentioned the pieces that they have lost in the process this offseason. You lost your star linebacker in Jerome Baker. And while yes, you did sign Kendall Fuller, you lost Xavier Howard. You lost Wilkinson. And two of your linebackers in Chubb and Phillips, they're coming off ACL tears. But you know what? Maybe I'm being too negative. Maybe I'm not giving the Dolphins credit. They signed Poyer from the Bills. You still got your dynamic duos in your running backs. You still got Tyreek Hill. You still got Jaylen Waddle. If OBJ could be a fraction of what he used to be just on the Rams, this offense could still prove to be quite dangerous. The question marks for me are in two places. One, the defense. There was too much turnover to know exactly what you're going to expect out of this defense. I'd like to assume that with Jalen Ramsey still in your secondary, you'll be alright. The other question mark for me would have to come down to Tua. Yeah, OBJ can be a great third option, but the guy throwing him the ball has to take an even bigger step if the Dolphins ever want to make a deep playoff run in this era's AFC. If Tua doesn't make the necessary leap in big games, as talented as this roster is, they may never get a true run at the Super Bowl in the next couple of years. As the games get colder, as the competition gets stiffer, Tua slowly morphs into more of a mediocre quarterback. The AFC East, to be honest, is kind of wide open, especially with all the departures from Buffalo. And you don't know what you're going to get out of Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. So with that, we will see what it comes down to. But for me, the OBJ signing is okay if he can stay healthy. But truth be told, there's a chance that he might not even make the final roster. It has to come down to Tua. If Tua can make the next step, they could be the next Super Bowl champions. I will say that if Tua doesn't make the necessary leap in the biggest games, as talented as this roster is, they may never get a true run at the Super Bowl anytime soon.